Well, guys, I guess I was wrong. Hey guys, it's Kevin Ginsmeyer for The Walking Dead, Season 6, Episode 7, Heads Up. And I was wrong, guys. Like I said, I want to reiterate something, guys. When Glenn died, I never said he's officially dead. Like, I said it seemed like the character was dead, and if he is dead, I said it was a good way for him to go out. So, I didn't really know what was going to happen there, but finally we got the answer in this episode. We got quite a few answers, actually. We find out Glenn's fate in this episode. We find out some other fates, which I'll get into, and, I will tell you guys, though, it really didn't seem like a penultimate episode. My main thing with this episode, that it really was just another, like, dialogue-driven episode, which wasn't bad. It's just we have a penultimate episode next week, and it really doesn't seem like there's much happening next week, except there's a bunch of walkers next week, which we'll get into. But let's just get in this episode. There's a lot that we found out in this episode, and I overall really did enjoy it. Not one of the strongest of the season by any means, but I still really enjoyed it. So, Nicholas, we start right off with Glenn's supposed death. Nicholas says thank you. He and Glenn fall from the dumpster, and the walkers eat Nicholas, who's laying on top of Glenn, and we realize that Glenn was never eaten. He actually crawled under the dumpster. They were just eating Nicholas the whole time, and Glenn was reacting to it. Which, I have to say, guys, on paper sounds really stupid, but the way they did it in the show, I thought was handled very well. I will say that. I mean, I never said that it would be stupid if, well, I said it would be stupid if they did that, just because it sounded stupid. Like, all the theories I heard of it sounded really, really shitty, but after hearing about after seeing, like, what they did, I thought it was, better than what they, I thought it was better than, what they did. I definitely think it was better than, what they, I think it was handled very well. So, Walker's reach for him, but he stabs him, blocks access to him. Walker starts to lose interest in the dumpster area and walks away, and Glenn looks at how little water he has left. So, night falls, and day comes again, and Nicholas lays dead by Glenn, who crawls out from under the dumpster, and, you really don't know what Glenn's gonna do here. He's all alone now. He drinks Nicholas's water, finds a bursted flare gun, and we see Enid in this episode. Enid yells heads up, tosses Glenn a water bottle before scampering off. So, yes, we see Enid is back in this episode, and I'm glad to see that she's okay. I was hoping Enid didn't die, and we get a nice pair up between the two of them, which I really like. By far the best scenes in this episode are the scenes between Enid and Glenn. I really love the scenes between them. In fact, I wish it was an Enid and Glenn-centric episode. The problem is we have other storylines to go to, which I simply was not interested in. I have to say, because of all the Enid and Glenn stuff, I really was not interested in the main storyline of this episode. I have to say that. I really was not interested in that, and I wish I could say I was, but I wasn't, and, yeah, so, guys, I really didn't care about the other stuff. So Glenn pursues her, asks what she's doing out there. He begins asking what happened in Alexandria, because obviously he didn't know what happened. He was away from Alexandria. He was in the woods. He didn't know what happened there. So she tells him everything that's happened, and Glenn asks if the walkers got through, and Enid tells him that he was people, and Glenn asks about Maggie. Enid doesn't answer. He tries to chase her down, but he sees her running away while he's on the roof. He chases her, but loses track and goes the other way. And then we go back to Alexandria, which again, guys, like I said, I just didn't care as much. I wanted to care, but I just didn't care. So, back at Alexandria, Rick inspects the walls as Morgan practices Aikido, and he greets Morgan and suggests that they talk. Rick notices blood coming through a hole in the wall before approaching Maggie on top of the wall. He tells her she doesn't need to stay up there so much, and she says she won't be. She's looking for a signal from Glenn, and she wants to believe that Glenn's still out there. Maggie's stuff as well, I thought was very strong here. He encourages her that Glenn, Abraham, and Sasha will all return. He wants focus on displacing the walkers so they can walk right in, because obviously he wants their plan to go well. He wants to be able to take down these walkers, and he wants it to go well for them. So Maggie tells Rick that Judith is starting to look like Lori. Okay, I can't vouch for that because I never saw Lori, so, I didn't watch seasons 1 to 3, so whatever. Glenn finds the guy who wanted Michonne to deliver a note to his wife and put him down, and he finds a note for Betsy on the ground and picks it up before running off, and Father Gabriel then posts notices for prayer by the solar panels, and Rick then tears them down. He still wants nothing to do with Father Gabriel. Father Gabriel is randomly back in the show. He's been gone all this time. We really haven't seen a lot of him. And Rick is just tearing them down. He really doesn't want to see Father Gabriel. He's really pissed at him, and he doesn't want any of this done. So they're really not handling his character well. I want some more progression in his storyline rather than Rick just tearing things down. But, if that's how they're going to do it, whatever. Rick teaches Ron how to shoot right in front of Carl, and Carl boasts a bit, saying that's the easy part and that he's going to be scared. And Rick advised him to get the gun up to his eye before shooting and making sure he has aim. Ron wants to practice shooting, but Rick shoots that idea right down. He does not want to practice shooting with him. And Morgan then approaches Denise's house and starts to walk away, but she opens the door and invites him in for oatmeal, and he denies her invitation. So she asks why he was there, but he insists that he's fine, and Rick asks him to talk now, and they sit down. And Rick explains that the people with, and I like this discussion between Rick and Morgan, because let's face it, Morgan really doesn't know what's going on in the world. He doesn't really know what's going on. He's not really sure, and I like that, because he really didn't see what's out there, and I like that Rick now is explaining what's going on. Rick explains that the people with W's on the foreheads tried to kill him, and Carol saw them let go. He admits it. He questions Rick about why he didn't kill him back in King County, and Rick says he knew who Morgan was, but Morgan says he would have killed Rick, which is really interesting, the fact that Morgan said that. I mean, we know that Morgan is practicing Aikaido, and obviously he's not going to kill him now, but I thought it was very interesting the way he said that he'd just kill Rick like that. Definitely, I thought that was interesting he said that. So he says that he doesn't really want to kill anymore, and he insists that people can change and all life is precious. Like I said, he really doesn't want to kill, and Michonne says it can't be that easy, and Morgan says that it isn't easy. He asks if they think he doesn't belong there, and Rick responds by asking if he thinks he can make it without getting blood on his hands. And obviously, that's not, it's a good strategy. Like, according to Eastman, that's easy to do. He can get out there with getting blood in his hands. It's not going to be hard for him to do. But Rick responds by asking if he thinks he can make it without getting blood in his hands. And basically, walkers are piled up against the walls, and Rick and Michonne think of ways to draw the walkers away. He wants to keep the plan a secret. He doesn't really want anyone to know about it. And Michonne wants to include the others. Deanna brings Rick the plans for the expansion she made, and she tells him one way or another there's going to be an after this. Because, they have to think of what's going to happen. Alexandria is starting to not be safe. They need to think of where they're going after this. And obviously, Deanna's going with them. Deanna definitely is going with Rick. A bunch of the Alexandrians are going to go with Rick. Where the hell are they going after this? And they need to start thinking about that, which is clearly not on Rick's mind. Rick usually is very spontaneous of where they go. Usually it's just wherever the hell they can find shelter. But the thing is, there really is no safe zone right now. Like, she said she wants to keep this a safe zone, but there are walkers piled up against the walls. It's just, it doesn't seem like it's going to stay safe. And especially the end of this episode, that's really something that Rick has to think about. So Rosita teaches Alexandrians and Eugene how to swing machetes, and Eugene is uneasy with the lesson. Rosie approached him, and he admits that he's scared of dying, and I like this scene because Eugene's kind of the coward of the group. He's lied to them. He lied that he, of course, was, a scientist. He wasn't a scientist. He's kind of been trying to find his place, and she tells him, oh, dying is the easy part, but the people around him dying, that's the hard part. That, people around him, they're gonna die, and he needs to face that. And Enid then sits in a worn-down diner with JSS notes near her. She tries to leave, but sees walkers. Glenn grabs her. He insists she comes in, but she draws a gun. She's willing to die in this episode, guys. Like, she's willing to just give up her life and die, which I thought was really interesting. So Glenn demands that she gives him the gun, takes it from her. He wants her to get home because half of the herd is headed that way. And Rick, because he wants to be able to protect her. So Rick reinforces the walls. Tobin approaches and lends a helping hand. And Enid puts down a walker. She finds the balloons from Rick's original plan and secures them onto her backpack. And Glenn tells her about a helium tank, more balloons, and more string. So this is really smart what they decided to do. They kind of decided to use it as like a rescue thing, to use it as like an SOS for someone to come find them. Because obviously they want to get out of there. They want to get back where they need to be. And Glenn wants to get back there. Enid wants to as well. And I thought it was very smart what they were doing. So Enid so then we see Rick and Tobin notice the blood coming through the walls. Tobin tells Rick he's scared the hell out of people when they first saw him with the beard and looking around like he saw things they weren't, but it turns out he was. And he explains that things moved slow and then started moving fast, but Tobin doesn't want Rick to give up on them. And Rick, I don't think, is going to give up on them. He's really worried, though, that Rick is going to give up on him. And I know a lot of people are saying it, and I kind of agree. I think Tobin is a goner. I really think he is. The fact that Tobin is worried that Rick is going to give up, that's something you can never do. Rick is your fearless leader. You can't give up on him like that. You can't think that he's not safe. And a lot of people this season have been questioning Rick's loyalty, and Tobin is one of those people. He's been questioning his loyalty, and, it was very interesting the way we saw that here. I definitely thought that was interesting. So basically, I was definitely interested in that. So Denise then reads on her. So basically, then we see that Glenn asks Enid who she stays with back home, and I like the answer to this question because it is an important question. Where has she stayed? And she says it isn't her home, but she lived in Olivia's place, and she tells him she was orphaned by walkers, and Glenn tells her that he was too, and Glenn tells her he understands her being scared. He tells her to honor the dead by going on and living because they don't get to. And I really like that line that Glenn says, he's kind of valued his life by doing that. He's valued his life by living because simply the walkers can't. The walkers are dead, obviously. They can't live. They can't. That's how they can use, them living against the walkers, which I thought was very smart of Glenn. Again, it sounds kind of stupid, but it really, if you think about it, does make sense. Show that you can live because they can't. They're dead. They can't live. And I thought that was smart that he said that. So Denise reads on the staircase as someone walks through the kitchen. She finds a mess, and Ron sneaks into the armory and steals some bullets, and basically Glenn and Enid find the safe zone surrounded by walkers. Enid starts to walk away. Glenn stops her. She tells him that the world is trying to die and they're supposed to let it, and Glenn says she's wrong. He won't let her die, convinced her to go inside. Glenn's one of the only people left that really have some kind of inch of hope, you can tell. Not a lot of people have it, but Glenn still has it. He still believes that they can still be a society and that their society's gonna be okay. When we know it's really not. We know the world is pretty much doomed. I mean, especially the looks of this world, it really is doomed. And I really think that Glenn wants things to be okay. I think Glenn knows in the bottom of his heart that things really are doomed, but I think he wants to stay optimistic that things aren't doomed, which is one of the reasons why Glenn's such a good character, and one of the reasons why I'm still glad he's on this show. So Rick and Tobin spot Spencer climbing on a rope above the walkers. Eugene and Tara look on. The rope begins to slip, and Spencer almost falls to the pit. It falls, and Spencer falls into a pit of walkers. Tara flies at them, and I thought they were just going to kill off Spencer here, and Rick and Tobin pulled Spencer back up. Morgan comes in to assist, and they're able to bring him back up. Rick yells and criticizes Tara for risking her life for an Alexandria, and Rick tells him that if he has an idea, he has to come to Rick first. And that was interesting that he told her that, you need to listen to me, because it's true. I mean, Rick's plan, like I said, is the greatest. You need to listen to Rick's plans, because that's what's keeping them alive, is Rick. So Morgan enters the infirmary, sees Denise's chest sheets, and arresting Scott. He tells her he has faith, not because he has to, but because he chooses to. And that's interesting the way he said that. A lot of these people just want to have faith to, keep themselves sane. But Morgan does it because he wants to. He wants to have faith. And he asks her there's enough medicine to spare and wants to heal a wound, and admits to her that it is not her wound. And Morgan walks outside. Carol looks on as Denise follows him. Carol follows with Judith, and Morgan and Denise enter the house where Morgan is keeping the wolf alive, and we know that Wolf is still alive. He is going to turn on them, though. I'm surprised that Wolf hasn't turned on them. So Carol asks Jesse to take Judith so she can get on watch, hiding the fact that she wants to follow Morgan. Sam calls out for Carol, asks what happens if he can't live with it. She tells him it eats you up. He questions how people turn to the monsters, and she tells him that the only thing keeping you from becoming a monster is killing. And I do agree with that. I mean, unless you kill, you're not going to die. That's really how Carol sees things. She sees things in the very black and white way. Either you kill or you die. It's that simple. You either kill or you become one of them. So Jesse comes back and takes Judith and Carol to unlock the doors to the prison and asks Morgan who he has in the cell. And Carl walks, because obviously they don't know that he's kept this, wolf alive. And obviously they're going to be really upset when they find out that he has. By the way, guys, nothing with Jesse and Rick together. I thought Jesse and Rick kissed, and there's nothing with them in this episode. Is continuity, not a thing in this show anymore? What the fuck? I mean, you have all this build-up to Rick and Jesse, and then they're not together? I don't understand this. Why are they no longer, they did not seem like a couple in this episode. They really did not. I get that Jesse, is tending Judith, but it didn't really seem like they were much of a couple here. It just seemed like, oh, Carol just passed it on to Jesse. That doesn't hit that Rick and Jesse are a couple. There's nothing with that here. So Carl walks in the streets. Ron follows him, drawing his gun. Michonne looks at Deanna's expansion plans, and Rick and Tobin continue working as Tara searches for Denise. Rick apologized to her for earlier and said she could have died. She told him she wasn't thinking about that. Deanna thanks Rick for saving Spencer. I did like seeing that Tara is still with Denise, I will say that. Deanna thanks Rick for saving Spencer. He tells her what Spencer did was stupid. He explains he could have hopped down and let the herd away while Spencer was up there, but Spencer would have died. She asked why, and he said because he's your son, and that's why he wanted to save him. Just because he's Deanna's son. Because he has trust in Deanna. He trusts Deanna. Deanna's put their trust in him, and because of that, because they have this established trust, he wants to save her son. I thought that was smart that Rick did that. Save her son because you trust her. Very smart. So the community, including Maggie, spot the green balloons from Enid being let go into the air. Maggie thinks that Glenn is there. She notices it. But then the tower outside the wall begins to fall and takes down the wall, and that's how the episode ends. Now, let me tell you guys, that was a really stupid cliffhanger. I mean, if this would end with Glenn being reunited with Maggie, I would have been fine with that. But we know that's not how this was going to end. I knew there had to be some kind of cliffhanger. Problem was, like I said, this really did not feel like a penultimate episode. It really just felt like a random episode. And that's really why I didn't like this episode as much. It was definitely better than last week's. Last week's episode was a lot better. I will definitely say that. Last week's episode I liked a lot more. I was into this one. Definitely, last week's episode I thought was a lot. Last week's episode I really did not like, but this week's I was into a lot more. There was a lot more going on that I enjoyed and stuff I actually cared about. What I didn't like is the fact that there were just some things in this episode that I found very, very strange. Like, why are Rick and Jesse not acting like a couple? What's going on with that? Carol's way of looking at things, I think, is really going to be a problem for Morgan. She's clearly going to try to get Morgan to kill. She's going to try to get everyone to kill because to Carol, if you don't kill, you're not living. You're dead if you don't kill. Which I can't understand what she's saying, but I do like Glenn's way of looking at it. Like, we kind of survive just by living. The more we live, the more we, rise up above them, because obviously they're really the only ones left living. And I mean, there are other people, but the ones that are left are the only ones left. And obviously, more people are getting turned to walkers. And I think it was smart that Glenn said that. I definitely really like that. But like I said, I really thought the scenes between Glenn and Enid were so good that everything else episode I really didn't care about as much. And I have to tell you guys, Glenn and Ned are the only things I really focused on here. One, because I was watching The Leftovers in between commercial breaks, and if you guys saw tonight's episode of The Leftovers, you guys know why I was focusing on it so much. Two, I just found this episode to not be that interesting, I have to say. Definitely not feel like a penultimate episode. However, they are definitely getting out of Alexandria next week. It is no longer safe. That wall is gone. Like I've said to you guys, if there's a wall in The Walking Dead, it's bound to come down. It's come down. The wall's gone. It's not there anymore. And Negan is coming. Negan is definitely coming next week. I know that's going to happen. They confirmed that Doug was that guy, supposedly. I think they said that Doug was the person that we met last week, who is Negan's right-hand man, which is very interesting. So I'm not really sure if that is going to happen, if Negan's going to show up next week. Expect a post-credit scene next week, guys. Definitely expect a post-credit scene with, like, Negan or something. Negan is definitely going to show up, because they have Negan casted. Negan is casted. They've finished season 6. Negan's coming at some point. I don't know when, but he's coming. So we'll have to see when that happens. Although he might not come this season, guys, because they finished season 6, so I don't know if Negan's coming this season. We'll have to see, definitely. But if you guys do know, Glenn's probably going to die when Negan comes, because I guess Glenn does die in the comics, but, what's going to happen with these walkers? Who's going to live? Who's going to die? I'm not really sure. Honestly, guys, I don't really care as much with that. I wanted to care more, but this episode was just very, redundant. Okay, yeah, you got to make this plan with these walkers. Just, can we get to something else? Seriously, I don't like that this entire season resided on this one plot. It was a good idea. They had a good idea with it, but I really feel these past 2 episodes have been quite slow. I haven't been into them as much, and especially last week's was very, very boring. The other big question, now that we know that Glenn's alive, who said help? Because obviously Glenn got out of there with no problem. So who else would have said help? Because obviously Abraham and Sasha and Daryl heard someone say help. Now, who else could it have been? We don't really know. We're going to have to see what happens there. Was it Daryl that was in trouble? I mean, I don't see things going well for Daryl, honestly. I see Daryl dying. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I see Daryl dying this season. I don't see Daryl living. First of all, Daryl's really not that interesting of a character anymore. They don't really have much to do with him, and a lot of times when they really don't have a lot to do with the character anymore, they usually just kill him off, and I think Daryl's the character to do that with, so we'll have to see what happens with that. It's going to be interesting. But let me know what you guys thought of this episode. I definitely enjoyed it. I didn't think it was a bad bad episode by any means, but I just didn't really feel like it felt like a penultimate episode. I didn't get that feel that next week is the mid-season finale. Next week is the mid-season finale, but I'm not getting that feel like, oh my god, I can't wait for next week's episode. I didn't get that feel in this episode. I didn't feel like, the stakes were that high in this episode till the very end. The ending of this episode felt very cheap to me. Now, does next week's episode look crazy? Yes, it looks insane. I have no idea what's going to happen next week, and I'm really expecting a lot of action. But I don't know. We'll have to see. Let me know what you guys thought of this episode. Like I said, I thought this was just an okay episode. I will see you guys in my next video, which will be for The Leftovers, which so far is insane. Honestly, guys, if you guys watched this week's episode of Leftovers, what the fuck is going on? I mean, I'm like 20 minutes into it. Someone explain to me what the fuck is going on, because I have no idea what's going on. We'll talk about it in my next review, but I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.